Hello from BI Consulting Services. Today we're going to do a short video. Well, hopefully it's short. It may take a little bit of time to get through, but essentially what we want to do is show you how to use some of your email campaign data and align that or correlate that with your sales data. So I'm sure there's plenty of organizations out there who are constantly sending out email campaigns to potential customers, hoping that they'll go out to their website and purchase something. And today I want to be able to show you how you can leverage Power BI, which is a Microsoft product, to analyze your data and provide insights. So essentially what we're going to do is at the end of this video, you're going to know how to build out a email campaign and sales dashboard that looks exactly like this. So essentially what we're going to show you are the total number of individuals who received the email campaign that went out, total orders that were shipped, the customer count, so the folks who actually have went out and made a purchase based on all the campaigns that you sent out, what's the success rate of those. So we're going to see of all the people you've sent out emails to, how many people are actually coming to your website and making purchases. And then we're going to sort of intertwine that with some of your sales data and just some geographical information. So this is a fairly robust report. So without further ado, we will begin this whole entire process. Before we start, I want to just quickly take you to the back end of this report. Again, we're going to start from scratch with this entire process, but this is what we're going to come up with as far as our final output. So I thought it'd be extremely helpful just to sort of show you that. So some may say, what's the data set that's behind this? Well, I'm leveraging a simple report. It's a sample superstores XLS. I can't remember if I got this from Power BI's sample reports or not. I think I did. So you should be able to easily find this sample superstore report out on the Power BI service, or just hit Google and you'll be able to quickly identify this data set and leverage it. One additional thing I did was use Google to find me some just random email recipients that I can leverage. So I essentially went out to Google and said, hey, I want to generate fake email addresses. Give me a bazillion of them. So that's one additional step I did have to take just to get a ton of email addresses. In your case, you wouldn't have to do that. You'll have email addresses. So for this one, for the sake of this video, I had to create dummy email addresses, and I will quickly just go out to the Excel sheet with all this sample superstore data in it. So imagine that you have a ton of sales data, or it could be anything. Maybe you own a fitness center and you send out email campaign data for that. Maybe you work at a local, daycare or after school facility, or maybe a YMCA. It doesn't matter what you do. Essentially, if you send out email marketing to your potential customers, there's a good way for you to be able to leverage your current data and then the email recipient list to come up with some pretty high level or in the weeds details around the success of those campaigns. So quickly, you're just going to see just a couple of little things here. You're going to see order ID, which is pretty important. It's going to tell you the total number of orders that were processed over a specific time. You're going to see the order date, ship date. Here I've done some stuff where I just wanted to create these test email addresses. So I put this here, then just did a concatenate function to merge the customer name and then the email address details. Now I could have done this inside Power BI, but it was just as easy for me to sort of dump it inside Excel and do it. And so that's essentially this data, some sales, discounts, and profit details as well. Just a list of all the orders that were returned, the sales agents who worked in those specific regions in which the sales were completed, and then again, just this list of email recipients. So again, I just used Google to find some functionality to pull out a whole subset of email recipients. So these are all dummy email addresses based off this orders. And then just Google generating some additional email addresses for me at the very end, where you can really tell, I think at the very end, yes. So here's sort of all those additional email addresses that I was able to pull out just from leveraging Google and asking for it to send me a whole bunch of dummy email addresses, which is essentially what it did here. So I'm going to leverage all this information inside Power BI to build out these reports. So without further ado, I think I've sort of went through all the different components. Now let's start from scratch and sort of build out this report on our own. So let's quickly open up Power BI. All right. So as Power BI begins to open up for me, we will start this entire process. Okay. So the very first thing you want to be able to do, or you're going to do any sort of analysis inside Power BI, is actually go out and get data. So right when you open up the desktop version of Power BI, you go out here, you get your data. So my current data set happens to sit inside of Excel. So that's where I'm going to go to get my data. I'm going to use the sample superstore data set that I just showed you. I'm going to load all 4 or 5 tabs, I don't recall which one, 4 tabs of this data set into my report. I'm going to hit the edit button because I want to be able to do some transformations on this data once it's inside the tool. For instance, I want to use the first row for the returns data set to make sure that I've got the actual column headers at the top. I'm going to do the same on all other pages, just make sure the data is in a format that's consumable once I start looking at it. So this is the orders data, and here's the email campaign list. So one last thing here, I'll just push that up. So there's a couple of things we can do here to this data. For the most part, there's not a ton of transformations that need to occur. We're going to use this as sort of our master data set. So this is what we want to look at. We want to see of all these email campaign recipients, who made purchases. And so to do that, we're going to use this merge queries as new functionality. So there's 2 ways you can do this. I can just merge it into this current email campaign recipients list, or I can just create a new query. I'm going to create a new one just because I want to be able to audit and validate my data set once I'm done with this, and I'll sort of show you how I'm going to do some of that as we go through it. But I'm just going to create a new one just so we don't have any issues. So what do we want to merge together? Well, we want to look at the orders. How many orders were successfully complete, and how many of the people we sent out emails to actually came out and made a purchase? In this case, we're going to match this, so these orders are going to be joined together based on email address, the customer email address, and then the email campaign recipient's email address. I always do a full outer join. In this case, I want to see all the rows from orders. It's actually extremely important, and it's sort of going to tell us essentially the success of the email campaign. And so from there, I'll just hit OK. I'm going to bring in all the tables. There may be some cases, and honestly, I probably don't need all the tables, but nevertheless, I'm going to go ahead and bring those in. I'm going to name this something else other than merged. So I'm going to say email campaigns and orders. And so from here, I'm just going to make a few small changes, very limited in number. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of things, but one thing I do want to make sure of is that I don't see any null values out here in this data set. Sometimes it's kind of hard to be able to tell, but when you do these sort of merge functions, you do want to make sure that your primary data set, especially this data here, which is your email campaign recipients listing, is not null. So all I did was essentially sort the data from descending to ascending just to see if at any point I can see any nulls. I did see nulls, so I'm going to exclude the nulls from my data set. Everything else I think I'm good with. There's not a ton of transformations again in this sample data that we need to do. The main thing here is just to merge those together. So I'm going to hit close and apply. We're going to let all these tables load, which shouldn't happen. It should happen fairly quickly. And once that's done, we'll look at the relationships that we need to create amongst these tables, just to make sure everything sort of interacts and plays really well together as we're looking at the data. In some cases, Power BI may detect the relationships and actually form them for you, but just in case, let's go back here and take a quick look. Okay, so we're going to just add a couple of little relationships back here. Nothing too major, honestly, but it's always good to sort of have some relationship between these data sets. I think here in this case, we could probably use order ID or row ID. I think for the sake of this, I'm going to go ahead and just use, got it on a many to many. Oh, there's duplicates, so the row ID must be a unique field within the data set. So let's leverage the row ID for this example. I think it's not going to make a huge difference one way or the other. And then same thing here. Let's see for returns. All right. For the email campaign recipients, we can build a relationship if we want. There's nothing really stopping us from doing so. One thing that I am noticing is that there are duplicates somewhere in this data set. For the recipient list, we probably don't want duplicates. There's no point. We just want to be able to see the total number of folks who actually received the email. We're going to be able to get that pretty clearly. So let's remove any duplicates in this data set. Let's close and apply that. And some may say, well, how did you know that there were duplicates in your data? Well, it wouldn't let me do this relationship initially. And it was almost forcing me to do a many-to-many, which I don't do any at all. There are some folks who will probably show you some videos doing that. I tend not to. But when I was doing my many-to-one, it wasn't allowing me to do it. And so that clearly tells me that something's wrong. There's duplicates in your data. And in this email recipients list, I don't really need the duplication. I just need to know every individual that received the email. All right, so we've done that component. I tend to, just for full transparency, do a lot of my transformations and cleaning up of the data at the end of the report. But for the sake of this video, I'll just go ahead and do this with you guys. So all I'm doing is just creating a header so that I can put a title at the top of the page at some point during this video. I'm going to put a background in place, nothing too crazy, just something to sort of make the page pop, nothing major though. And now we're going to just start looking at this data. So there's a handful of things that I want to be able to do quickly inside here. So a couple of pretty important tasks is, let's just sort of look at some of the information. So the email recipients, for instance. And this is all sort of a part of that audit process that you want to participate in as you're going through this. So right now I see 2,600 email campaign recipients. So that's the count. And we'll see if that's right. Hopefully I don't think that this is wrong. I think this is probably exactly accurate. When we start looking at some of the data that's been merged together, we'll do some additional validation there because we want to make sure there aren't any blanks being captured in our data and a number of other things. So let's grab order ID. Let's sort of look at it. Let's see how many orders we had go out. Okay, so we see 5,009 orders. Okay, so as you can see here, 5,009 orders. And then the last thing I want to be able to look at is the total number of customers. So just based on the email address, specifically, how many customers actually placed an order? And in this case, it's 1,034 customers. So all these numbers are going to be fairly important as we're starting to do calculations and formulas on this merged table that we're going to be leveraging. We want to kind of make sure that all of our numbers inside our merged table align with these numbers so that we can get, at the end of this, again, we're going to have something that's going to show us the success rate, customer count, orders shift, and then just the email campaign recipients as well. Okay, so let's start with some of the formulas that we're going to have to leverage inside of this dashboard just to make sure that we're able to create the success rate calculation that we're going to need at the end of this. So let's first start with just a quick count of email campaign recipients. Again, we have that number here. We could probably just drag this in honestly and get a count, but we're going to have to do a measure because we're going to, at the end of this, get our percent as well. So let's go ahead and start creating our measures. So to do that, go to modeling, new measure. And now let's call this email campaign recipients count. So in this case, we're going to do a calculate count. We're going to do it on the email campaign and orders, email campaign recipients. And we're going to just make sure we exclude blanks just to save us from any potential headaches. We don't want to include blanks at all in our data set, so let's just go ahead and add that component in here too. Let me bring this down a little bit so you're able to see it. So again, just give me a count of all the email campaign recipients, and we're going to exclude any that are blank. And so if we drag this out here, which is a number we'll probably use throughout this entire video. Let's see here. So that's a distinct count. Let's make sure we do a distinct count here because that number seems fairly high. It may be right. I thought it was a little bit less, but maybe it's not. We will confirm that quickly, and pretty easy to do, but let's just check this out real quick. There we go. So we just want to do a distinct count. All right. So there's that. Let's go ahead and make this card a little bit cleaner. Let's give it a title. Email recipient count. All right, let's change the font color. All right, perfect. So here we have our email recipient count. That's easy enough. Now let's just do the same thing for customer count. So we can just copy the same exact query because essentially it's the same one that we're going to use for the count of customer emails as well. All we want to do is do an customer email or a customer count. Let's do by email address. So here we want to look at customer email. We can just grab this here inside the brackets and we'll be using it in this situation. All right, so we'll close that off. We will copy this over and then we'll just go ahead and drag in the customer count in this one. All right, let's see what we've got here because these numbers are slightly different. This is a distinct count. This is also a distinct count. There must be, where did I pull this from? From orders, email. Let's drag email in there again. Let's make sure the counts are right. All right, so it looks like this number may slightly be off, so let's kind of see what's going on here. Customer counts. We're doing a customer email count and we're excluding the blanks. No, we definitely want a distinct count in. 793 email recipients. Let's see here. So I think that might be off slightly. All right, let's see what we can figure out with that. Okay, so the 793 is off, and I think I realize why that's happening. I remember that we filtered this data down to exclude the nulls over here, and I actually think we have to include those. So please disregard when I said we should exclude those. If I filter out these, it's actually filtering out some of this data, so it's okay. We'll just apply the measures to exclude blanks, and then any caveats or outliers will be sort of picked up in our data set. So there you go. Sorry about that. Now let's keep in the nulls, and then you'll see again, this count sort of ticks and ties to this. This matches this, and these are all on different tables, so that's good news for us. We want all of these formulas to actually match. So we're going to do one more. We're going to do it on order count. So we're going to do a new measure. The only difference here is that we're going to look at the order ID. So it is orders.order ID. All right. We'll do the same thing here by grabbing the same bit of information. Uh-oh. All right. We'll call this orders count. Okay, so now we have these three KPIs on our page, all matching back to the original data sets, which is exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and trash can those. We don't need them any longer. They were just there for validation. And let's call this order shipped. We'll call this customer count. So we have our email recipient count, our customer count, and then our order shipped count. So those are probably three of the most important formulas that we'll do basically in this entire video. So the next step is let's just go ahead and get a success percentage. So again, we'll go back to this just quickly for 1 second. I know you guys are probably getting used to it. So you'll see here we have the success rate, which is exactly what we want to be able to look at here. We want to see what the success rate is across this campaign and all these different KPIs. Again, we'll just interact with this information once complete. So what is the success rate? That's the next formula that we want to be able to complete. So again, we'll click new measure here, and then we'll go ahead and we'll just do a count. So the first thing we want to look at is the email recipients count. So we'll say success. Let's do email campaign success, and we will do equals. So let's do the email campaign recipients count, which is essentially all the folks who received the email. Okay, and then we will do the customer count, and actually, we better make sure I've done this right. I don't believe we'll need that there, and actually we should place the customer count first. Let's do divided by email campaign recipients. Next thing we will do, just make sure I've done this right really quick. What did I call this? Email campaign success. That's right. We will make this a percentage. All right. So now we've got it. So email campaign success. All right. So there we have it. So again, across the top, we've got the most important information about this data set. Pretty high email campaign success rate. I've seen it to where, I've seen 2 to 5%. And again, this is all variable, but nevertheless, you can see these KPIs, and officially of all the emails that you sent out, for whatever the duration and time is, and you can make that decision. This is the email campaign success rate. So let's go ahead and add a date here. I believe we're going to use order date just for the sake of this example. Just so we can have a filter across the page where we can sort of filter this data down by a specific date, time. Let's turn off that piece. Let's make this white. We'll make the slider black so it's easier for you to see and identify. Sergio bold. Sagio. I never can pronounce that, so it's something. All right, let's put this in here, just a date. Background. I think I've got all these at 12. Let's put that there. All right. So we've got this information on the page. We're going to add a handful of other filters. In this video, we'll just keep it real simple and probably put like 1 or 2. We won't put any major filters in here. But let's look through this data just a little bit and see what we can include. So just for sanity's sake, let's kind of make sure that we're not looking at blanks. That way we can actually identify what's in the data. Perfect. All right. So we have country, city, state, zip code. All this is very important information that we'll look at as well. But let's first start with the sales reps. Let's do that first. So we have a handful of sales folks. It's these people here. And let's see what their sales are. We'll just go ahead and do about order count to quickly identify how many orders each of these individuals have completed. All right, perfect. All right, let's put this like that. Let's close that. We don't necessarily need it. Let's put a label on that. Let's make it white. We're going to put this on the inside center. All right, perfect. And let's just give it a title. Order count by person sounds good for this. We can make it sales count. Actually, it's not sales. It really is order count. So yeah, let's leave it like it is. Perfect. Okay, so now we know quickly that Anna is the top salesperson, or at least order person. So by orders, she's beating the pack at 611 orders. And of that, you can see that, I think I've gotten this field here. Well, it's going to be a different filter, so just disregard that for the moment. But nevertheless, you can see that we've sent 669 emails, or email recipients. So these are the 669 people who have received something from us from one of our email campaigns. Of that, you see we have 754 customers. And what that means essentially is, just so you can kind of see, because it's kind of misleading, you're going to see customer, but then let's also go ahead and just toss out the email, in the email address here. It doesn't like something, so hold on one second. Yeah, let's change that really quick. Let's do customer email address here. Close that. Let's do this again. Let's do account really quick. Let's do an order ID count here. So let's do order count beside of that. Okay, so the first thing you notice that we've done here is essentially just break out the total order count by the sales rep. One thing I was able to quickly notice in doing so was that I actually want my order count not to be a distinct. I don't believe. Give me just one second. I just want to kind of look at that with you guys. Yeah, I think our total orders shipped. Quickly just look at these numbers. Sometimes full disclosure can get a little far down into the weeds, but there we go. Yeah, I think we're okay with just including these all. We placed over 9,000 orders. So if I go to just our orders table and I put in orders ID, I do just a regular count here. 9,900. Let's put order ID and then let's put city. Let's don't summarize the order ID. And let's kind of just see what we're looking at here. Let's see. Let's do a count. Let's do a customer name. So there's 2. order IDs under the same one. Row ID, are they unique? Every single row ID is unique, so it's an individual, so it must be the product name. That's exactly right. Some of these folks are going to have ordered multiple items on the same order, and I think that's okay. Let's look at it in total for now. Let's just say in total there were that number of items shipped, so it may be a little bit more indicative to call this items that shipped out during an order. We can look at unique order IDs. I think either way is going to be perfectly fine, honestly, for the sake of this video. I don't think it makes a huge difference one way or the other. We could do all orders. Actually, let's stick with distinct, because it's really actually the number of orders that we're sending out. It's great that people are purchasing a bazillion different items, but for sanity's sake and for logic's sake, let's look at it by the total number of actual orders, not the quantity of inside that order. Okay, awesome. So we got that done. Let's now look at it by, let's see the different types of products there are. So I think there's like a category field in this data set. Perfect. And we really only want to see those that are not blank in this instance. So there are those numbers, and then let's do an order count. All right. So we can quickly see office supplies are probably one of the most popular things that sell across this organization. And then let's quickly just clean this one up. No major changes here. It's pretty intuitive, but nevertheless, let's just kind of give it a couple of little things to put it in line with all the other components of this data set. We will make sure there are no decimals, just to kind of keep the data crisp and clean and able to see sort of everything associated with it. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got sort of order count by category. We've got order count by salesperson. Let's call this sales rep, just because then we'll know. All right. Perfect. You can kind of see this data just begin to dwindle down. Up here, we're going to put a filter. Let's go ahead and add that now so that we kind of know what we're looking at. Let's put it as segment. Let's add it as a filter. Let's give it a drop down function. All right, let's clean this up a little bit. We don't need the header. We're going to make the background white. All right, perfect. Okay, and then we'll just call this segment. This will give us the opportunity as we're going through this data to sort of see by a particular segment, you know, how do sales look also. Okay, and up here, just a quick function that you guys probably will want to use many times as you're building out reports and dashboards. This just simply aligns your data. So let's align the top, and then let's evenly distribute the KPIs across the top. Okay, perfect. All right, next, let's see what's next. So this one has a subcategory page. So let's go ahead and add something for subcategory. So order count by subcategory is sort of the next visual that we're going to look at here in this one. So let's do a subcategory. Let's do there we go. So we've got order count by subcategory. Let's give it a name. That's perfect. Let's just clean it up a little bit. Nothing major is going to happen here. Just small aesthetic changes to clean the data up slightly. Okay. That should be good. Awesome. So let's just make sure these are all lined up. All right. Let's line that up. Let's go ahead and bring these up slightly. Awesome. Okay. So on the current tab, you can quickly see what we have. So order count by sales rep, category, and then subcategory. Next, let's do something with a map view. So in modeling, there's a couple of things you want to do just to clean your data up. You want to sort of categorize these things so that they actually work appropriately. So this is a city. So let's go ahead and make it a city. This is a country. So let's go ahead and make this country. This is state. So let's go ahead and categorize that as state. And finally, postal code. All right. So in the hierarchy, I'm just going to do country, state, city, and postal code. So that's a ton of information. I know it. And we're going to just put this in sort of an hierarchical positioning. And essentially what I'm going to do is, because you'll see this happen a lot of times in Power BI, and you'll notice it once you start playing around in here, but essentially what can happen sometimes is you'll put your map together and you'll quickly realize that for some reason your data is just not showing the way it should. And 9 times out of 10, this hierarchy here will eliminate things happening like, quickly let me just show you. Let's just put in postal code. And then let's put in something for profit. So profit's going to sort of be indicative of size. So you can quickly see here on this map that we have numbers all over the place. Well, it's mostly because the postal code is falling into some of these areas. Here you can quickly see the postal code's taken off the first 2 digits because it is zeros. And so you can just quickly see all these numbers are all over the place. It's clearly wrong. Well, one cool thing you can do is start adding key components of your data above that, and it fixes that issue. Now, you don't have to go all the way down to postal code. Let me just first clarify that. And so you can quickly see now, everything that was all over the place has now been resolved because we put this hierarchy in place that provides you this data at a pretty robust level of granularity. It doesn't seem to like postal code, which is okay, because postal code provides, again, a level of granularity we may not want to see. Let's see if I can happen to fix the postal code real quick to show. If it shows, great. If it doesn't, we can look at it by city-state. No big deal. Yeah, it doesn't like postal code. It may like postal code if we skip city. Maybe getting slightly confused about sort of leveraging both. Yeah, it doesn't like postal code, which is fine. Now let's just stick with city in this instance. All right, awesome. So now we've got this data all the way down to city, and then you just have order profit. That's sort of variable. You can make this a little bit more robust if you sort of just probably look at, let's see what happens if you just change it to sales. And it's a sum of sales, so you can sort of see across all these areas. There's tons of stuff going on. So let's use that here. Let's just call this order sales by. And let's actually get rid of country. I don't think we need country anymore, honestly. There we go. Yeah, we don't need country. There we go. So order sales by state and city. Perfect. All right. All right, so there's that. Perfect. So let's take this same visual here and let's just do one other thing. There's tons of data, as you can already tell. Let's look at this at a different level of granularity. I think that'll sort of help us as we're sort of looking at this data. Oops, let me get out of that. Sorry about that, guys. I'm getting a little too fast for my computer, it looks like. We're going to format this, align it on the right-hand side, and let's just make this visual slightly bigger. Okay, perfect. So we're going to do order sales by state, and there's a ton of data here. So let's sort of flow this through. Let's put it like that. So you can see this sort of flows through, shows you a ton of information. But for the sake of this, let's just look at ordered sales, like top 10. I want to look at the top 10 states based on their sales. So we're going to go we're going to do top 10 here. We're going to base this on their sales number. We're going to apply that. Okay, perfect. So we're going to do this top 10 awesome. So we got top 10 by order sales. And then let's just clean it up again. So it's just this normal process of cleaning your data. For this one, I'm going to leave it. All right, perfect. And let's change that slightly to thousands because it looks like most of these numbers are in thousands. And let's make that 0. Okay. And then let's go up here. Oops, turn that axis off. We'll make this black and bold. Perfect. I think we're good there. Okay. And then last but not least, let's look at some returns data. So let's just kind of see what's the total number of returns by sales rep or salesperson. So we got person in here. Let's go ahead and change this to order count here. Oh, that won't work. So let's do returned orders. So the order counts are slightly off. So there's the returns, the total of that amount. Let's go over and look at the relationship tables. So on the return ID row, let's make this both ways. I believe if we do that, we should be able to then have this look at the person ID. No, it doesn't like it still. Let's try one other thing and see if we can get this to show up. Let's change the relationship here for region to both ways. Alright, so it doesn't like that. So let's quickly look at this one more time. So those are the orders that are returned. Let's get the person. Where's region at? Huh. So it doesn't like something in this returns. Let's look at the returns relationship real quick. Order ID to so the relationship's looking at row ID, but it should be looking at order ID. So I think that's the problem. Let's see if that fixes my main issue here. Let's grab the order ID. It doesn't like looking at that region, wherever it may be coming from. Let's grab person again. Let's look quickly at this. Let's make this go both ways. There we go. All right, so I just had to clean the relationship slightly. I had this sort of looking at row IDs where it was matched, so we just had to fix that to get that to work. Now let's call this returns by sales rep. Awesome. All right, let's give this thing a title. Let's just name it something simple. Sales and campaign details. So pretty high level, nothing major that we want to look at here. We're just trying to get a good idea of how the campaign was successful, if it was, and then just some details around the sales that were gained. Potentially some of those are going to be associated with the email campaign, but you can clearly tell that about 70% or 62% of the orders that were generated were outside of those folks that were part of this email campaign. So that's sort of important to know. But again, you have this highly interactive report that's going to tell you a ton of different things. Pretty cool information too. So if you look in California, for instance, you can quickly see in California where most of the sales were generated. And it will tell, and then you can sort of just drill down into that data. So let's say I just want to see, sales in that particular location. You filter that data down, you can quickly see that $175,000 worth of sales were generated from this location in Los Angeles, California. Those are all generated by Anna. And then it's going to tell you what the biggest sales items were there. So all this is extremely important and helpful information. And again, you can also see the success of your campaign and filter this data down in different ways. So I hope this video was helpful. You're going to have a link to my website down below. If you have any questions or recommendations for things you'd like to see next, let me know. I have a couple of ideas, so more videos will be coming, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch mine today. Again, so this is just sales campaign and details. So this sort of aligns back with this one. You can call it whatever you'd want, but essentially email campaign and sales detailed outline at some level of granularity. Slightly different visuals, but the same thought process. Again, you can filter through your data, look at it in different ways, and start to see just sort of different components of your data and have different messages or themes that start to pop up as you're looking at it as well. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. If you have any questions, feel free to go to my website. We have a contact us section that you can provide some details, and we'll get right back in touch with you. And again, anyone who wants to call us by phone, you can do that as well. Thanks again for watching. Have a good one.